workshop. County commissioners got together, talked about how much money this project could bring in. Are we getting closer to a deal? Evan Closky, 10 Tampa Bay, joins us now on the Nick Wise Show. Evan, good afternoon. Appreciate you coming on. I know you were at Bolts practice. How did that go this morning?
Yeah, it was good. Actually, a very he said he couldn't even remember the last time that they had practice like this. He could probably count it on his hand, considering what their schedule has been like. But they're getting the work in, and obviously we're really excited to see the playoffs start on Sunday.
Yeah, we got the game time, 5:45. We can't wait. They waited forever to tell us, but we finally got that game time late last night. To me, it kind of feels like, now shifting gears over to the Rays, to me it kind of feels like the county commissioners want to pass they want to pass the stadium, but they don't feel like they have enough information to vote yes. Does that sound accurate? And what more information do they want from the Tampa Bay Rays?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Generally speaking, I think they have the votes if they can get there, right? But getting there is a key part of this. And the reality is the speed of how fast they are going to try to make the stadium deal happen is, not typically how they do business. They have a lot of taxpayer money to work with. They want to do their due diligence. They want to make sure they're making the right decisions for all their constituents. And typically with a project like this, one that's going to be the biggest potentially in Tampa Bay history, they would like to make sure that they have all their I's dotted and their T's crossed. But, there are a handful of things, from something very basic of just making sure that the Rays have their part of the money since they're front loading everything. There's probably about 8 to 10 bullet points of questions they still have. So that's really what it comes down to when you're moving as fast as you're moving. It's not necessarily like pessimism, which it can come across to as many. It's just more of like, we are moving so fast here and we're just trying to get the answers as quick as possible and to find those resolutions because we genuinely want to make this happen. And that's, I think, the key takeaway is it feels like both sides are working their best to find solutions. It's just, are they going to have enough time to figure it out?
Now, we all saw the email yesterday that came out from Ken Babby to Bonnie Wise, talking about if we can't get this done by the June 1st deadline, they'll have to look elsewhere. If we're kind of rushing it here and we're up against a deadline, is there another place that's going to be able to do it even faster than Tampa? Because that's where I'm kind of getting lost. And what are there other? I know there's a lot of cities that are waiting for Tampa to fail, but to be able to move on a 2029 timeline, is that possible anywhere else?
Yeah, the 2029 timeline is the goal here in Tampa Bay, right? If it doesn't work out, there's always you can work out a deal with the Trop, extend it for a year or two, figure out your options, and away you go, right? I mean, the Trop just rebuilt itself. Pittsburgh is not going to, push them away if they want to extract another year, 2, 3 years out of that facility. But the reality is they have a deal at Hillsborough College to get that land. The state's going to help them out, regardless of how you feel on one side or the other. Governor DeSantis is a fan of this proposal. He's close with Patrick Zalewski. And there is a natural deadline that comes with the fact that he, is going to be walking out of office here very soon. And the unknown is concerning. But right now what we do know is that, hey, this land is available. The state is going to help us out in the ways that they can. And we got to get this done now so that wheels are in motion and things are protected. If not, do the Rays have to go searching elsewhere for land that they're going to have to purchase? And if so, they're going to need a lot more money to do that. Money the city of Tampa probably is not going to give them. Thus, now you go reach out to Orlando, where they have TDT dollars that they will just fling at a Major League Baseball team. And the Dreamers are still kind of gearing up for potential backup option as a backup option. I believe Major League Baseball has their expansion cities already, but there are going to be tons of cities out there that will be like, hey, we will throw you all of this money. Come to us. And that's really the reality of the situation. It's not so much that the Rays have to be ready by 2029, even though the lease is going to end at the Trop by then. It's that they want this done here in Tampa. And for it to be done in Tampa, the way that it needs to be fiscally done, It's got to be done now, or else other possibilities have to be thrown on the table.
Yeah, that's my biggest fear in the world right now is losing our baseball team. Evan Closky, 10 Tampa Bay, joining us. You know, the CIT money, it seems like, see, yesterday I watched it. It's interesting because I watched it yesterday, and it sounded like the CIT money can be used. It also sounds like the transportation upgrades in the 9 new fire stations will all still get taken care of through the CIT, even if money goes towards this project. Were you under the assumption that this money is going to be used for this project? Because Josh Wostale posted on Twitter today that, you know, if we use this money, you don't get the fire stations, you don't get this and that. But they said, they started off the meeting yesterday saying a lot of these things are still going to get taken care of with the CIT money, even if it's used.
Yeah, I mean, look, the legal was there, and the issue, it seems like, is voter intent, right? That is the legal issue that I think they're battling. It seems like coming out of that meeting yesterday, the CIT money can absolutely be used for public facilities, and which means it can absolutely be used for funding the stadium project. Legally, they are fine there. The problem comes down to voter intent, which I'm not a lawyer. It's a gray area. There's just a general feel of I leave that kind of legalese to people who maybe know the law and know what could possibly be counted as voter intent. And to me, it's a little bit of a gray area in how you actually do that in the court of law. But beyond that, Ken Hagan is on record saying there's no way this deal is getting done without using CIT money. Wostell is somebody who is a clear opponent against using any CIT money for this project. He, pitched a rebate program, something that he believes, they can fund and give like $738 million, I think is the number he gave. But it requires the Rays to also go back and forth with the county and pay over time versus the county front-loading everything, which is something that the Rays do not want. So these are part of negotiations. This is how the tactics are and what's, possible. And, the fact is Wostell is not going to vote for this project. But the fact is this does not have to be done by unanimous decision. So, Wostell is going to fight his fight. That is his right. He's on the county, and he's looking out for his constituents. And if his constituents don't like that, they can reach out to Wostell's office and tell him, hey, you better change your tune or I'm not going to vote for you, right? That's politics in general. That's how, we all should be functioning as people in society with our politicians. But ultimately, the CIT money can be used for the stadium project. It's just a matter of, digging into some legalese with voter intent, and then also just the natural foundation of should we be using this money for the stadium project.
Evan Closky, 10 Tampa Bay, joining us on the Nick Wise Show right now. We're talking about the Rays workshop yesterday. The Rays and the county seem to be short $75 million. I can't imagine that this project would go down over that little bit of money. Now, it's a lot of money to me and you, but to them, it's not a ton of money. What do you think happens with this $75 million that's short right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. But I think your point is correct, right? Like $75 million in a $10 billion development once you factor in everything, it's a spit in the bucket. So, I'm sure everyone's got to get creative. The county has kind of made it known, like, hey, we really don't want to be the ones paying the $75 million, and look, that's how negotiations sort itself out. I don't necessarily know how they're going to bridge that gap, but there are many more buckets, and they're looking under all the couch cushions to get creative and find different ways to make this happen. And ultimately, I don't necessarily know how that's going to get resolved, but if that's like the last, point here that they got to figure out, like they'll just get it done. I think in general, 93% of the funding for this project is figured out. So you're just figuring out the last 7%. And I just think that if you're going to put all your great minds together, you'll come up with a solution that will make it work.
Do you think yesterday was a good day for the Rays in making this project come alive? Because I feel like some people think yesterday's workshop was productive. Some think it wasn't productive. Do you think yesterday, when it comes to getting this team in Tampa Bay and for the Rays standpoint, was a good day?
Yeah, I mean, a good day in the sense that it didn't take a step back. I think like my read on the situation was everything is moving the way that I have expected it to move. And there's still going to be pain points. I still think you're going to hear negative rhetoric before you get to the votes. It doesn't mean that the votes aren't going to happen and things aren't going to get done. But typically in these scenarios, as you get closer to deadlines, as things are building up for a vote, you are going to get the all-out blitz. You're going to get the blitz from the Rays saying, we got to do this or else we're going to leave, right? We already saw like a smidge of that in that letter that Ken Babby wrote. It is just the reality of the situation, but you start hearing that rhetoric more and more as the stakes get higher. You're going to start getting more of the opponents getting louder because they do not want it to happen. So you're going to start hearing all this stuff with more velocity and ferocity. Like you're going to start hearing that more and more as we approach a potential vote. Could come in a few weeks. Maybe it's pushed down the line a little bit longer to get some things done. But ultimately, I just think that things are moving in the right direction. I didn't walk out like listening to that and speaking with people. Like I don't think I walked away saying this was some tremendous win of a day. But when I was keeping tabs of it and watching it, my big point of interest was, okay, when I'm listening to the county commissioners, do I believe they're taking a step back? Do I believe that they are getting scared by this project? Or are they moving in a way that I'm not so sure anymore? I didn't get those vibes. It felt very much like, hey, we're asking the questions, the right questions. We want some of these things figured out, but we are all kind of pulling in this thing together, and we're trying to find a solution.
Yeah, it kind of felt like they all want to vote yes. They just, the analysis, they weren't sure how accurate that was, obviously all coming from the Rays, and I think they want more clarity there. But they all want this done. And by the way, did you notice Ken Hagan was wearing a Tampa Bay Rays shirt under his sports jacket yesterday?
Yeah, no, he was, and we know where Hagan stands.
Yeah, he wants
right.
it.
I mean, he's been on your station multiple times, telling you where his stance is, and ultimately, he also isn't just going to fling a bunch of money and for these politicians also and the way that they work, right? I mean, if they cut a bad deal, they're also their livelihood is going to be cut because they're just naturally going to be removed from their situation. So I think you're hearing them try to handle this responsibly, and what's ultimately going to happen is they're going to be pushed to a point where you might not have all the answers, but you have to decide, is this something that we want to get into, or do we want to risk the possibility of not having this in our future? And do we want to risk potentially going back to the drawing board and finding a new location and potentially competing with more cities? Because the price is exorbitant now to what, some believe, and it could get much worse, right? Last year, a couple of years ago, we're talking about a certain price in St. Pete for what that project was going to cost. And everyone's like, whoa, the price has gone up so much in a couple of years. It ain't going to get cheaper. It's only going to get more and more expensive. More and more cities are going to do this type of stuff. You're going to hear crazy prices. This is the largest subsidy a major league baseball team is going to get for a stadium. And it's not going to end there. Somebody else is going to beat that mark, and it's going to keep going that way. Because sadly, that is just the reality we live in, and we can have a totally different debate on that. It's just a matter of can they get it done? And Hagan, being as outspoken as he is, gives some Rays fans optimism that they can find a path to success.
Evan Closky, you can find him 10 Tampa Bay Sports and at Closky WTSP on Twitter. I always tell people on my show you're a great follow on Twitter. Appreciate all your Tampa Bay sports coverage every single day, Evan. Thank you for coming on this afternoon, and have a good weekend, all right?
You too, and anytime. I appreciate you, Nick.
Anytime, Evan. I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we're talking to Evan soon, maybe about a Bolts victory in the playoffs.